We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, the podcast where we explore the art of songwriting, celebrate incredible artists, and dive deep into the stories behind the music. I'm your host, Simon Fink, and as always, thank you for joining us. For a week in May, we had the incredible opportunity to take This Song Is Yours to Los Angeles, where we recorded a special series of episodes with some truly brilliant and lovely artists. Today's episode is part of that LA run, and I am thrilled to share it with you. Our guests today on the podcast are the beloved and endlessly inventive indie rock band OK Go. Originally hailing from Chicago, the band has forged one of the most fascinating paths in modern music, one that refuses to follow any kind of conventional trajectory. A certain viral video catapulted them to global fame, and since then, they've gone on to rack up billions of streams, they've topped radio charts, directed dozens of award-winning music videos, and collected accolades that include 3 VMAs and a Grammy Award. But their creative output goes far beyond just music. They've also collaborated with DNA scientists and the Muppets. They have testified before Congress. They've been published in academic journals, and they've even launched an educational initiative for middle schoolers called OK Go Sandbox. Last month, OK Go returned with a brand new record titled And the Adjacent Possible, which is their first full-length record in over a decade. The album is a rich, sonically adventurous collection that showcases both their sharp songwriting and boundary-pushing creativity. It arrived alongside a stunning new music video for their single Love, which, true to form, is as visually mesmerizing as it is technically mind-bending. While I was in Los Angeles recently, I had the chance to sit down with frontman Damian Kulash to talk about this new record and everything that's happened in the band's world during their time away. We chat about the creative process behind the new album, including how one-track Sonic Textures were born from vinyl floor tiles. We also dive into the band's history and how music videos have become an inseparable part of OK Go's artistic identity. Now, we want to say a massive thank you to Colin and Nina for their help with today's episode. The brand new OK Go album and The Adjacent Possible is out now wherever you get your music from, and the band are currently on tour across the United States. You'll find links in the show notes on where you can buy the album, grab tickets to their shows, and follow the band across all of their socials. While you're there, be sure to follow us across all of our socials and subscribe to this podcast, especially since we've got more amazing episodes coming from our recent time in LA. Subscribing means that you won't miss a thing. All right, now let's get into it. Here is our conversation with Damian Kulash from OK Go. We swirl and whirl and music's invented again. In this grand ballroom of nothingness, we soar, we sail to the only song there's ever been. I would very quickly like to welcome to This Song Is Yours, Damian Kulash from OK Go. Hello, sir.
Hello.
How are we?
I'm so great. And yourself?
Doing very well. Thank you very much for your time and joining us while we're here in Los Angeles. It's very exciting to be chatting with you. It's a very exciting time for any fan of the band. How are you feeling at the moment? There's heaps going on.
There's a lot going on, and it's good. It's all very good. There's been a long period of not a lot going on, so it's good to be back. We haven't. This is our first. We have a new album out called "And the Adjacent Possible," and it is the first in 10 years, which is embarrassing to say. But it's not because we didn't intentionally take a break. We just life happened, and other creative projects that we were all really excited about. First and foremost, children. Our guitarist and I both had kids, and I remember when he had his first daughter being like, we're gonna this is 6 months off of touring, and then I had twins and I was like, that's gonna be another 6 months. It was when you have twins, if you want to be around for your children and your wife, you're not leaving in 6 months if you have twins, and presumably if you have one child too, I wouldn't know, but it was wonderful, very intense time. And then there was this pandemic that I'm sure you probably heard about, and then I made a movie with my wife. My wife and I directed a film for Apple called The Beanie Bubble, and it was a delightful experience. I don't know why I sort of like I kind of thought that I'd be able to do that. I'd like direct that and also keep writing at the same time. It turns out that when you're directing a film, you're really, really busy for 2 full years. And so it just means that like by the time we kind of looked at what we had on, gathered up, sort of like the demos we'd been working on, and really started focusing on like, when are we going to put this out? It had been 8 years when we kind of freaked out. It was like, get going. And now there's a record. And I'm so pleased to be like sharing stuff with people again,
100%. It's a beautiful, beautiful record. So firstly, congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
I imagine that talking and acknowledging the time that you just kind of mentioned, I imagine that for a band that is known for its dedication to creativity and continuing to kind of push things both visually and sonically, which I kind of want to get into it in a little bit, I imagine that it also takes time to kind of come down off a high when you're wrapping up a record kind of cycle. And then again, going back into it, I imagine that even with the life and directing a movie, which congratulations, by the way,
thank you.
That there is an element of wanting to have that time to kind of breathe, revisit life, be inspired, not consistently be, living in that creative mindset.
Yeah. Boy, there's so much to say about that. Like, I don't... no record cycle for us has been exactly like the one before. I mean, of course not, I guess. But there's... usually when we sort of finished up touring on a record, you don't really know that you're done, right? Like there's kind of like there's the big chunks of stuff that were pre-booked and that was all set in advance. Like that stuff happens, and then there's a bunch of shows that like, oh, who know? They're like, there's an offer to play here, and there's a thing to do that, and you just kind of keep on chasing these different opportunities that are really fun, but sort of very energy consuming. And suddenly, and then you wind up, you just like one day your day isn't completely booked, and you don't totally know what to do with yourself. It's sort of like, oh, good, I get to be creative again. But then you sit down to work on that, and it doesn't always, you sort of like, you don't know what to do with yourself a little bit. And so that period of getting back into the cycle of things, of becoming more exploring and less reactive is, you just don't, it's hard to know what to do with it or what counts as making something. I'm sorry, I'm being so abstract here, but let me take this from a different perspective. Right now, we are in the middle of, we've just released an album, and it's like we know exactly how we're spending every day because there's shows to play, and that means there's a million things to do to put the show together, and there's videos to make, and that means there's a million things to do to put the videos together, and there's release plans, and there's this stuff, and now there's social media stuff that you kind of have to pay attention to, and like it's just everything is a business, and there's a lot of creativity involved in that business, and there's a lot of creative decisions involved in that business, and some of it is very satisfying. Like after this interview, I'm going to go work on the lighting for our show that we'll be playing next weekend and thereafter, and there's plenty of creativity involved, and it's really fun. You get to have all these ideas and do all these different things, but it's all very reactive, right? It's like we've got this thing we're going to do, and I got to make sure we don't screw it up. Or we got this thing we're going to do, and I want to make sure it's as good as it possibly can be. Or that all of the things one could do with this sandbox have been explored so that we can get the exact right thing. Mm-hmm. That's a very different type of creativity than the sort of blank slate of like, well, now what do I want to make? and making an album is much more the latter, right? Like after you do all this stuff, there's sort of a period of like, wait, what do I want to make? And what's interesting about this new album is that it actually came from several different periods of that kind of open-ended kind of like blank slateness, because after our last album fully 10 years ago or even more now, there was some of that, and then having children was its own big explosive release. Talk about creativity, there's nothing like children, and then the pandemic had versions of that, and making the movie had versions of that. So there's been all these periods of me sort of like falling into the blank canvas again, and some periods to reflect on those and hear what I had done 2 years prior without having released it yet, which gave a lot of space to review and revise, and it makes this album feel more finished to me than anything we've done in the past, or at least more considered, I guess, because it's like we didn't just make it and put it out. It's like we made it, and at least a good half or 2/3 of it had many chances to change and grow.
Do you find that when you do return to the band and you're making music, that there is like I guess talking to what you've just acknowledged, the process this time round of being able to sit with it a little bit and not necessarily be reactionary. Has there been a process previously where you've, I guess, approached the album not in a similar way? What's the wording I'm trying to use? I think almost kind of having it that. I think, well, for example, this was the first album that had a video upon rollout, if I'm right. So, like, I guess allowing it to sit as a final thing, as that kind of finished product, in a way before being put out and having it immediately go out to people. I guess allowing it to, what's the word? Like based almost in a way.
Gestate.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect wording.
That process was very good for it creatively, I think. It's difficult in terms of one's own sort of like impulsive exuberance about the art. Like you want to make it and give it to people, but there's a lot of sort of being forced, or I don't know, by ourselves, but saying, no, we're going to do this right. And like, I'm not going to get these songs out as fast as we can. We're going to like finish it all the way we want it, and then release it carefully. It's hard to sit through psychologically, but very good for the art. You know what I mean? Is what it felt like to me. We make, of course, very elaborate videos, and it's sort of our signature, and those take so long that we can't just, like the standard process for rock bands is like you make the record, and then there's you go out to a half dozen or a dozen directors and say, like, we've got this song, and what would you do for a video? And they write a two-page brief on it and say, this is what I want to make, and you pick one of those, and then you show up for a day or two of a shoot, and they make the thing, and it comes out on the day your record comes out. That means that like the band has to do, all of I don't know, like 3 or 4 days work on the video total, and because ours are months and months of work, and we make them ourselves, it's really hard to fit that in before the album is released. And this time we were like, well, it's been 10 years, why not just make it 10 and a half? Like it doesn't. If you're not as anxious to. I suppose that like the sort of marginal, whatever the opposite of utility is, the marginal detriment of waiting an extra week didn't really matter, or an extra 6 months didn't really matter once you've waited this long. And so it's good to like actually be able to go and do a bunch of creative work that, specifically talking about the 2 videos we made in advance of this album coming out. One of them was for the song "A Stone Only Rolls Downhill," that had 64 single take videos on 64 phones, and laid out as a moving mosaic, basically. Like we just put the phones on the floor and then filmed it. After having filmed very carefully what was on those phones. And the second one for a song called Love, which is us in a train station in Budapest with 29 robots and 60-something mirrors doing a big, long choreography that is very kaleidoscopic and psychedelic and magical and beautiful. Both of those took tons and tons of work from us, and were super, super, super fun to make. And normally, 10 years ago would have come after the album. That was less possible now. And we had the space to do it the way we wanted this time. Also, really, there was no other option, because now, when you release an album, it's industrial endpoint. It used to be that an album would come out and then there would be new radio singles every 3 months or 6 months or whatever until the radio stopped caring about their album and you were on to your next. Now, Spotify and other streaming services like that, they will only playlist something or sort of promote something if it came out that week. So once your album's out, there are no more singles, because you can't, unless you have some insane, big story that sort of pops across the world for some reason. Your album is finished 7 days after it came out. You know? So it was like, well, we better make all the videos in advance this time.
I think it is a true dedication to yourself and the band. The fact that, and I don't want to, we are a songwriting podcast primarily, but it also does seem silly to not talk about the videos while we have someone here who obviously does hold the art form in such high regard. And I know that you guys do put months and months of effort into it. So I don't want to focus too largely on the videos, because I want to focus on the album as well and the music that's being made, but also do want to acknowledge the fact that these videos, they do time and time again. I think people are always like, oh, cool, new OK Go video coming out. And it is the thought of like, once again, the gentlemen have topped themselves time and time again. It's new ideas. It's like, I'm curious, I guess, trying to tie the two conversations in together. When you are in studio, when you're even maybe creating, when you're songwriting, are there any times where there are those ideas almost forming in your mind? Like if you're writing in the studio, can you almost kind of envisage?
No, believe it or not, the videos are a totally later phase of the songs. To me, what it feels like is, well, I'll start with the songwriting process, and we'll get to the video in a second. But when you're in that blank slate process that we were talking about, like for me, that's mostly experimenting with. I say sound, but it's not quite as. That feels oversimplified, but it's when I sit down in my studio with a guitar or at a keyboard or something, it's all the things you know how to do are right in front of you, and they're all exactly what you expect them to be. You play an E chord, and then you play an A chord, and guess what you get? An E chord and then an A chord, and it's so boring, right? It's like those are a bunch of sounds, and they are pleasant sounds, but whatever, they're sounds. And every once in a while, if you can sort of get yourself off balance enough to do something you didn't expect, or to find some new way through it, to add these two things together that you wouldn't normally have done, you discover at the other side a burst of emotion. Like what happened, like those things add together in a way that does not seem like it should work, right? There's like 1 + 1 = 500 kind of feeling, and that is the thing we're generally chasing. It's that. I mean, I'm sure you've talked to so many artists about this stuff over and over again. I'm sure you've heard a million people have their own kind of like metaphors for what that is, and it just that kind of grasping at the magical on the other side of the known, right? Like there's all this stuff. Well, here we are in this room. It's the same damn room again, and like what is that? Like how do you get out of this reality into that magic space? That is all about the combinations of sounds, whether that's sort of in their rhythms or their textures or their harmony or their timbre. It's like the whole way that it comes together. Something in there is magical, and for me at least, we're never chasing. I'm never starting with a meaning. Going, here is a song about love, or here is a song about anxiety, or here is a song about that person I saw in the grocery store, whatever. Like there's no specific meaning. It's chasing that feeling, that magical thing that you can't quite touch. And most of the time that thing isn't even there. Then if you get it, maybe you'll get it for a second, then it's gone, you know, or you'll get it like there's this incredible riff or there's incredible change between this chord and that chord, but it just doesn't have any shape to it, right? It's like Pez, you know, like a candy that's like you get that one hit and then you're sort of like it's sweet and there's nothing else. There's no tang, there's no mouthfeel, there's no anything, right? It's just like one note, you know? And not every good idea has an arc to it or has dimension to it. And so finding the ones that you can actually get more than just one idea out of, that like something about the way that they mix with other ideas, or something about the contrast that you can find between that loud part and this quiet part, or this, you know, all of that starts to become this big ball of it's like a little world of its own. And not many of those get to the next step, but those that do start to take on like a kind of diachronic across time shape that you're able to like start in this one feeling and move through these other feelings and get to the end. And if you're lucky, those feelings it's not sadness or joy. It's like these multi-dimensional, impossible to put into words, or at least for me, emotional contradictions that are much more like what it's like to be a human than I am happy, I am sad, right? Like all these is sort of like I am both lusty and furious at the same time, or I am both like so joyful and so sad at the same time, you know, all of that stuff. Then you're trying to figure out what it means. Like that then it's like, what are the words that could go along with this? Because if you describe it, it's gone, right? Like, and if you just if you just put a character into that feeling and describe their life, it's probably really one note and unidimensional and boring, right? And what I'm getting at is like that whole thing, you need to pull a new dimension out of it, or find a way to expand that in an unexpected direction so you can counterbalance it. Like great lyricists, like Elvis Costello is really good at this. Like it's like a really angry lyric against a really happy song. Somehow, like, oh, now I understand them both. You know. Or, I mean, there's I don't know, whatever. You can think of so many people who have mastered this art, but rarely is it like, oh, that music is sad, and therefore I said I am sad. You know, and getting that. So, but suddenly the song starts to have quote unquote meaning. I mean, I think. Truthfully, it's meant something like the meaning is the emotion, but now it has literal words and ideas connected to it in sort of intellectual way. And there's all this work to get it to actually record that and make it and without killing it. It's mostly trying to keep the thing alive and find its new little crevices without accidentally deflating it along the way. And then after all of that, you have a song. And To me, the video process is essentially the same. It's very similar to the process of the words. Is like finding something that doesn't deflate the emotional validity and vibrance and resonance of this thing, and doesn't try to illustrate it, but rather extends its feeling into another dimension. So that does come from the song, but it's not like. Again, it's not like, well, it was a love story, so let's show a love story. It's sort of like, what is the thing? Like, now that I know what this emotional ball is in my own head, can I visualize that in a way that other people that will make that feeling bigger and more vibrant? And that can only happen long after the song has been completed, so you know what that feeling is, and with a sort of a new input from a completely different type of creativity, which is this visual world that it shouldn't be trying to describe what you're doing. It should be trying to pull against it a little bit.
I do find it honestly fascinating because I know that there is so much work, as you said, months and months and months, sometimes years of time kind of put into this whole video part of it, and so that the songwriting has to be perfect as well. Wondering if you might kind of indulge me a little bit. My favorite track on the record was Fantasy versus Fantasy.
Oh, good.
There's a beautiful kind of romantic, heartfelt feeling to this one. I think almost similar to what you were just saying in terms of like a very romantic song structure in a way, if that makes sense. The lyrics might not be as romantic, if I'm kind of wrong.
I think there's a level of wink in there, but they're very sincere and very romantic, but just written from a place that's a little bit more sardonic.
And that might be might be what's drawing me to the song. Also love, and I'm pretty sure, is it castanets? Are you guys using castanets?
You know what that is? That what sounds like castanets is actually my mother-in-law's floor. I'm so glad that you asked about this because you really have to get in there to hear this. But in my mother-in-law's house, in the guest room, there are tiles on the floor, and I was rolling a rolling suitcase over it, my kid's suitcase, ding, 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 and I heard it was going across the floor, and then also like the notes happened, and it turned I don't know. This would be hard to. I hope I can describe this. Think of a tile as a tine, like in a like a glockenspiel or something, right? That it is a ceramic version of that. And if you've put glue or caulk or whatever it is you put on your tile on all four corners or under the whole thing, it's just going to go. But if there's just one daub in the middle, then you have a little edge hanging out around the sides, which can ring like the way a glockenspiel or a xylophone or whatever would ring. And that's just by chance what happened in this room. And I remember my wife, we were visiting her for the weekend, and my wife and kids were like getting ready to leave, and I was supposed to be. They were like, "Come on, we're going." I was like, "Wait, hold on!" And I found I found something I could use as a drumstick, and I put my iPhone on the floor, and I just went on each of the different notes I could find, so that I had like a sample library of all of the different notes. Because I was like, it's just such a beautifully it's sort of a percussion sound, and it's sort of but it's pitched also, and then I built that into the track.
I find that so fascinating. Thank you very much for kind of sharing that, because I think that, I feel like it almost demonstrates the level of creativity that we've been talking about throughout this whole thing. I think it might not just be the songs and music. I think it might be maybe your mind, Damian, is extremely creative.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But what's it? I can't believe I'm spacing on his name. The sort of original super producer who kept a revolver on the mixing desk.
Spector?
Yeah, thank you, Phil Spector. Like, to me, Phil Spector vibe of that song, it's like, you know, Phil Spector's famous, of course, for putting, you know, lots of people in the studio at once and then very carefully miking it to get this, what he referred to as wall of sound, that like you've got this massive bunch of people doing this stuff. And we wanted that Phil Spector-y romantic overload. But we weren't going to fill 2 studios worth of session players from the Motown era, you know? And so it was sort of like building that song to have that spacious, nostalgic kind of space, like air around it. It like, you know, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are songwriters themselves and live in the world of plugins and you know, digital production in a laptop. And it's so amazing what we can do now, but it's also so sort of plug and play. Like you can get every type of ambiance and reverb and space around something. And I think a lot of times we're now just hunting for unconscious signifiers that this is real, you know, that like you're not just in the infinite space afforded by this or that digital algorithm, but there's just like you can hear the air around something. And so we did a lot of recording for that song that was just like my floor, you know, just like there's the little bit of hiss from the recording and a little bit of there's way lower than our conscious hearing level. My kids are probably running by in the back of the recordings, you know what I mean? And that kind of like bit of texture, I think, has a lot to do with making that sort of romantic timelessness. You know?
I absolutely love that. Thank you very much for sharing. I know before you were mentioning the kind of the lighting of tour, I know that there are, I want to make sure I get this kind of correct, there are a number of US tour dates at the moment.
Yes.
Is there a certain track off the record that you're most looking forward to, both maybe audibly, but I imagine playing around with those visuals and the spectacle of a live show? Is there a track that you're looking forward to kind of playing?
Let's see. The new song, playing the new songs live is, it's such a interesting challenge because we don't write, like, as you can tell from the way I was just talking about the writing process, we don't, it's not like we sit down with, you know, an instrument in hand, each of us, and go like, what do we know how to do? You know, like, which is, I think, definitely how I started playing music when I was a teenager, and definitely how I think most bands sort of develop their sound, at least historically. And I'm going to take another aside, but like I kind of envy that now, that there was a reason why Pixies sounded like Pixies. You know, there was a reason why. I mean, The Cure sounded like The Cure. Like this is what they knew how to do. You know, and with the way that we have learned to write music as a band has mostly been in the digital era, you know, and so it's mostly been a process of playing something into Pro Tools and hearing its effect on us and going, oh, but what if we could do this? Or what if we do that? And we're not a particularly like digital heavy band, but it does let us, we're responding to recorded sounds more than we are going, what do my hands know how to do? And so we wind up with a much more mixtape kind of sound than I think we would have 20 or 30 years ago, where it's sort of like, I don't know, these are the sounds I know how to make, you know. Now it's sort of like here are all the sounds I could figure out how to generate, you know, and doing that live is sort of, it's a big challenge because it's kind of like, well, which parts of this do we need to recreate live and which ones do we not want to? Like there's the most recent single from her record is Love, and the verses are very mechanical and kind of driving and kind of 80s-y, late 70s, early 80s, kind of like new wave sound. The choruses are a much more like loose, rockin', crazy late 60s, early 70s kind of classic rock sound. And it just doesn't feel the same live. Like to get the verses to rock, like you can't, like this, the synth bass that we used in the recording just feels dead and flat live. Like you need someone to be playing, right? Anyhow, it's like getting things to have the same or similar emotional space and valence live is a fascinating process. So now, which ones do I like to do? I didn't answer your question at all. I'm sorry. I am really enjoying A Stone Only Rolls Downhill because it's a very groove based song. It's like it's not all about kind of like putting this structure up against that structure and feeling how different it is to move from this key to that key or sliding from this interesting universe into that one. It's just more kind of like riding along this groove, and that is that's really fun to sort of like sink into as a live band. And you know what? We've been doing a very different version of "This Is How It Ends." There's a my favorite song on the record right now is called "This Is How It Ends." It's a kind of modeled after a classic soul ballad sort of feel, but it's it's a 6/8 love song. Well, I mean, it's a I shouldn't say love song, but it is a very sad song, very earnest. The one where I feel like I like the words actually. I was like, oh yeah, I get what this is, and I feel like I wasn't struggling for it. It just happened. It was like, yep, this is the song. And the live version of it, I've just been playing it. I've been doing a finger picking acoustic version of it solo, and it is very. There's a risk to it. It's like I walk out into the audience and just play it by myself standing on a road case. And it's like, there's, when I fuck up, which I sometimes do, it's like, there it is. You know, like there's a real charge to being like, no, it's just you people and me, you know, like there's no anything but this. And I like, that's really fun for me.
I think that sounds incredible. I'm very excited to kind of see some of these shows. We're going to make sure that all the US tour dates are in today's podcast show notes.
We will be coming to Australia too.
That was my next question. So that's very good to hear.
Yeah, we don't have dates booked yet, but we've been doing a lot of Australian press and promising everyone it'll be in 2026. Our manager hasn't heard me make that promise yet, but he will now. No, we were actually going to try to come this summer, and some stuff got in the way. But we are planning on it for 2026.
Look, very excited to hear that. Very, very excited. Damian, lastly, we usually ask our guests to wrap up what they're listening to at the moment. Anything on high rotation for yourself?
High rotation. I mean, you know, with my kids basically define what we listen to, and they've got very interesting. They're 6-year-old twins. They like 60s spy music, 60s spy jazz.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
They really want to hear like the Man from U.N.C.L.E. theme. And
eclectic taste.
Yeah, well, they're in a really cool phase where what they want is they're living in stories. They live inside of a story. Like they are. If like the world is for ninjas to run around in, and if they're not being ninjas, what's the point of the world? You know, and so they're clear on the sound. They like want the feeling of the sound. They're like, what does it feel like? If does it feel dangerous and cool? Like, so we listen to like a lot of like John Williams scores, and you know, like they want movie score. Like they actually ask for movie music, even though they like for movies they've never seen. And then they like anything with like hilarious jokes in it, you know. So like any fart music is really popular, you know. So that takes up a lot of my time right now. A lot of my listening space. I was, you know, psychedelic porn crumpets. Have you heard of psychedelic porn crumpets? I believe
Australian band, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
I was very impressed. It sounds like when I was a teenager, if I had heard that, I would have been like, we have achieved the singularity. You know, it's like what I wanted was like swagger and and psychedelia and math rock at the same time. And I can't say I've gone deep, but the like 2 records I've listened to I really loved and was like excited that type of discovery is still fresh for people. You know, it reminds me a lot of like of my love of Shudder to Think at that age, and currently. You know what? I did a podcast last week that was where it was like go do discuss one thing that changed your whole creative existence, and I chose Repeater by Fugazi because I grew up in Washington D.C. and the punk scene there was unbelievable and changed my life forever. But it sent me down a rabbit hole of re-listening to all the Fugazi records that I listened to as a child. And ever since, but my current angst levels are not high enough for me to do a lot of like of DC punk from the 90s on a regular basis. But listening to the Fugazi albums of my youth again has totally reinvigorated me in a wonderful way. So that's on high rotation, and let's see if there's anything else I've got for you. The Harry Styles record, Harry's House, is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm. Harry's House, yeah.
I recognize this is not a new find for the world, but I'm not like a boy band, you know, kind of like hyper pop type of. I mean, I don't know if that counts as hyper pop, but you know what I mean. I love. It's a very organic and musical record. It sounds to me like great musicians exploring in new sounds circa 1985. You know what I mean? Like it is not trying to be new in its sort of like novelty way. It's just somebody trying to write great music, and I love it.
Which I think is kind of why it almost weirdly works. I think the fact that Harry is trying to weirdly bridge the pop stardom with those sounds is a beautiful task that he's doing. But fantastic choices, a bit eclectic, you know, a bit of Aussie math rock, Fugazi, Harry Styles, but love it. Damien, thank you so much for coming to chat with us on the podcast. I appreciate it.